Happening now, former President Trump is in Manhattan this morning ahead of his historic court appearance. He will become the first former president ever to be indicted on a criminal charge. Trump will surrender to authorities, be placed under arrest, and then processed at a Manhattan courthouse. From Trump Tower to Lower Manhattan, we have the latest on the charges and what to expect from the hearing.
Also this morning, a major multi-million-dollar lawsuit filed by the Virginia teacher who was shot by her 6-year-old students. The red flags and troubling behavior she says the school ignored.
And happening now, from powerful tornadoes to blizzards, millions of Americans are under severe weather threats today. All as the Midwest tries to clean up from last weekend's devastating tornadoes. Meteorologist Michelle Grossman is tracking what could be another major hit for the region. Thanks for starting your morning with us. We've got a lot of news to get to. I'm Zinklea Samoa.
And I'm Stephen Romo. Joe and Savannah are on assignment. And we begin this morning with what's expected to be a historic day for the United States with the arraignment of former President Donald Trump. In just hours, the former president will make a roughly 4-mile trip from Trump Tower to a Lower Manhattan courthouse. Once there, it's unclear if a mugshot will be taken. We do know he will be fingerprinted. We'll then get an idea of what these charges actually are once the indictment is unsealed. After the arraignment, Trump is expected to then return to his Mar-a-Lago estate in South Florida and then publicly address the situation later tonight. We have full team coverage of this day unlike any other. In just a moment, we'll speak with MSNBC contributor and former U.S. attorney and senior FBI official Chuck Rosenberg. But we begin in New York with NBC News correspondent Dasha Burns outside of Trump Tower and NBC News national correspondent Gabe Gutierrez outside the courthouse in Lower Manhattan. And Gabe, let's start with you. What's it like outside the courthouse this morning? And what are we expecting when Trump actually makes his way there?
Hey there, Stephen. Good morning. Well, we've noticed the foot traffic here begin to intensify over the last several hours. You can see plenty of people behind me. The street behind me where the former president is expected to walk in, that has been shut down. There is a heavy police presence here. And as you can see, as right now, NYPD officers shutting down parts of this road, keeping people out of the road. And you can see the crush of assembled media here, really from around the world, all waiting to get that first shot of the former president walking in to face criminal charges for the first time. Now, just within the past hour, we saw DA Alvin Bragg walking into the courthouse as well. He's been coming in here early each morning. The significance of this moment, no doubt, weighing on him as we expect that arraignment to get underway around 2:15 Eastern time this afternoon. Former President Trump, as you mentioned, expected to drive down here in a motorcade from Midtown Manhattan, from Trump Tower. That 4-mile drive or so expected to happen sometime around midday. Still, lots of questions about, whether he might briefly speak before the arraignment, whether he might speak after the arraignment. Again, those remarks scheduled tonight at Mar-a-Lago, but so much unpredictable at this point. We do expect him to be fingerprinted. He will be read his Miranda rights and processed, and then we expect this arraignment to last about 5 or 10 minutes or so, and he's expected to plead not guilty. Stephen?
Stuff that's going to end up in the history books. And Dasha, you're outside of Trump Tower, where the former president spent the night. What's the situation there? And do we know at all the mood of Trump's inner circle right now?
Well, Stephen, it's pretty quiet here right now, perhaps the calm before the storm. A sharp contrast from what we saw here yesterday as the former president arrived here in Midtown Manhattan. Massive crowds gathered here, everyone recording that moment on their cell phones. A huge media presence, huge police presence. Now, the police presence here this morning is still pretty heavy. We've got barricades all around Trump Tower, all around this area. We saw a small group of Trump supporters earlier this morning. For the most part, though, right now, pretty calm. Also a sharp contrast when it comes to the former president's social media posts. He has not yet spoken out this morning. Perhaps he's getting some rest. Yesterday, though, all throughout the day, he was posting very, very frequently on his takeoff, throughout his flight, upon landing, and overnight, posting again, attacking the DA and saying that DA Bragg should himself be indicted. We'll see if he comes and posts on social media again this morning before he makes his way to the courthouse. Stephen.
And once Trump is back in Mar-a-Lago, we know he's expected to address the public then. Gabe, the Trump legal team did pick up a bit of a win yesterday. Last night, the judge agreed with them to bar broadcast equipment during today's hearing, but some cameras will be allowed before the arraignment actually begins. Do we know how that's going to work?
Yes, Stephen, the ruling not unexpected. It's unusual for cameras to be allowed inside New York courtrooms. But yes, late last night we did hear from the judge who ruled that video cameras would not be allowed inside the courtroom during the short arraignment proceedings, but video cameras would be allowed outside the courtroom in the hallway in the 15th floor here at the criminal courthouse, the scene of many high-profile trials over the years. So video cameras allowed outside. Inside the courtroom, still photographers will be allowed for a short time right before the proceedings begin. They'll be allowed to snap a few pictures, again, before the proceedings get underway. The judge also ruling that electronic devices, cell phones, laptops would be allowed to be brought into the courtroom, but you can't use them, essentially. And so that will obviously delay how we get information from inside the courtroom once those proceedings are underway. But Stephen Zinclay, again, these is expected to be a very short proceeding, 5 or 10 minutes, just a formality in some ways in this legal case, but there is nothing but a formality here. This is unprecedented. A former president of the United States facing criminal charges for the first time. Back to you.
Some tight restrictions there. And Dasha, I want to talk a bit more about protests, both for and against former President Trump. But really, I've expected to see more, especially after Trump posted on social media asking for people to protest. I know there are some planned for today. New York's mayor actually had some harsh words for Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's expected to participate. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, the Congresswoman is expected to be one of the headliners at protests downtown by the courthouse this morning. He specifically addressed her in his remarks yesterday, saying that people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is known to spread misinformation and hate speech while you're in town, be on your best behavior. He also said to any rabble-rousers coming to New York City to control yourself. Well, Marjorie Taylor Greene, the Congresswoman, had some words for the mayor as well on Twitter this morning, saying delusional NYC mayor is trying to intimidate, threaten, and stop me from using my First Amendment rights to peacefully protest. So we will see how that all goes down this morning. As Gabe said, a lot that is might be unexpected on this day. That is going to be one for the history books, guys.
Yeah, we know the NYPD is out in force in preparation. Dasha Burns, Gabe Gutierrez, thank you both.
Chuck Rosenberg joins us now for more. He's an NBC News contributor as well as a former U.S. attorney and senior FBI official. Chuck, good morning. Big morning. So let's start with the big picture here. The former president could be facing several felony charges. Does the grand jury decide whether to make some charges a felony? How does that work? And what does it all mean for Trump and his bid for president?
Well, the way it typically works, a prosecutor will present to the grand jury a proposed indictment. So really, it's the prosecutor selecting the charges. And then the grand jury votes up or down on whether to return the indictment, a true bill. If they agree with the prosecutor after they've heard the evidence that there's probable cause to believe that these crimes have been committed, they vote to issue the indictment. And if they don't agree, then they vote the indictment down. Here, Zinclay, it seems like they agree and that we're going to have an indictment unsealed later today at Mr. Trump's arraignment.
And Chuck, based on what we know now, before the indictment has been unsealed, what do you make of the case brought by the Manhattan District Attorney's Office? Do you see there being enough evidence to try a case like this, and are there enough credible witnesses here?
Well, it sounds like they put a lot of witnesses in front of the grand jury, but you asked me a different question, whether there are enough credible witnesses. And one way witnesses become credible, other than telling the truth, of course, is if there is enough sort of independent evidence, documents, emails, text messages, to corroborate them. And so hard to tell, sitting here, having not read the indictment, exactly what the factual contours are. But my guess is prosecutors here would have been very careful to amass evidence that corroborates their witnesses, because you don't just want to indict a case. That's not that hard to do. The standard for indictment is probable cause, one of the lowest standards in the law. If you indict a case, you want to be able to convict in court. The standard there is the highest in the law, proof beyond a reasonable doubt to a unanimous jury. So prosecutors, if they're being thoughtful, and I trust they are here, have enough evidence not just to indict, but to convict. We'll see. Time will tell.
Yeah, time will tell. We'll see that unsealed indictment in just a few hours. And Chuck, other ongoing investigations into Trump and his team are happening parallel to this case. That's no secret. Is there any coordination between different agencies at all when one person is facing all of these probes?
Yeah, a great question. So generally, yes, if I, as a federal prosecutor, am conducting an investigation and some other jurisdiction, a state or local prosecutor, has a similar case or a related case, we would coordinate to the extent the law permits us to do that. It's not clear if that's happening here, and Mr. Trump may well end up facing charges in 3 or 4 different places. Time will tell on that question, too. But it's smart for prosecutors to coordinate because sometimes you do have overlapping evidence and overlapping witnesses. That may not be the case with the may not be the situation, Zinkley, with the New York case. With respect to the Georgia case and the federal cases that are under investigation. But there's nothing wrong with coordinating, and often it makes sense to do so.
Chuck Rosenberg, important analysis. Thank you so much.
Meanwhile, the current commander-in-chief, President Biden, has avoided stepping in and commenting since Trump's indictment was first announced last week. For more on this, we're joined by NBC News senior White House correspondent Kelly O'Donnell. Kelly, good morning to you. So let's talk a bit about the strategy here. Biden avoiding discussion here. It seems like he's just trying to stay out of the way of the legal process. Has Biden commented at all about the indictment?
Good morning, Stephen. The president has been asked a number of times about the indictment, and he has made a very conscious and clear choice to say that he is not going to talk about it. I was one of the reporters who asked him about this the other day, and clearly this is a decision the White House has made, that there is no need for the current president to wade into the issues involving the former president, especially a declared candidate for what could be a rematch of the presidential election of 2020 coming up in 2024. So they've made a decision that because the president is the head of government, that he's going to focus on the work in front of him and not get involved in that. There was an instance yesterday where, taking a somewhat different angle, not talking about the Trump legal issues, but concerns about what could be around the Trump indictment and the potential for Trump supporters or others to demonstrate that kind of thing, asking President Biden what his concerns might be about how New York is prepared for this. He was asked about that at a Minnesota appearance where President Biden was, from reporters in the pool. Here's how that played out.
No, I have faith in the New York Police Department. Yes.
So President Biden willing to say that he has faith in the New York Police Department to keep things safe and secure and to not let any protests get out of hand. That's the kind of angle where we can certainly pursue that with the president. Are there concerns about protest? Are there any credible threats? They've said there are none surrounding the Trump indictment. But on the legal matters themselves, President Biden has taken a pass so far. Stephen?
Yep, resisting those questions left and right there, Kelly. So while Trump is actually being arraigned this afternoon, do we know where the president will be? What's on his calendar today?
He will be here at the White House. He has a meeting with his innovation and technology team. It will be happening at 2:45, so right at the same time that the former president is in the courtroom and dealing with this legal matter. And perhaps by then we'll have the very specific details about what's in the indictment. But the current president will be moving forward on his agenda. He's already had the daily briefing, or that'll be happening right about now, the presidential daily brief with all the security and intelligence information that is presented to the president and the vice president each day. And he'll have behind-the-scenes meetings. But at that specific time, when former President Trump is in a courtroom, the president will be here at the White House carrying out part of his own policy and dealing with science and innovation. Stephen?
Yeah, Kelly, we don't have a lot of time left, but I did want to ask about this recent AP poll that shows Biden's approval nearing some all-time lows. With all this going on with Trump's legal issues, how will he be able to try to capitalize on those polling numbers?
Well, certainly the current president is focused on trying to go around the country and talk about his economic agenda, talk about specific plans they're doing, and you'll see a lot more of that as we expect he will ramp up for what we anticipate will be a re-election campaign at some future point. He's also got foreign travel coming up and those kinds of things. The polls have been a challenge for President Biden throughout much of his time, and that's something they're accustomed to here, and they're just going to try to keep pushing on the policy issues. The politics of this current environment are certainly complicated. Stephen?
Complicated to say the least. Kelly O'Donnell, thank you.
Now to Nashville, where police say the shooter in last week's deadly school shooting had been planning the assault for months. Police say journals they obtained from Audrey Hale's car and bedroom gave an outline of Hale's plans to carry out the killings at the Covenant School. 6 people were killed in the shooting, 3 of them children. Authorities are still searching for a motive behind the killings, but say resentment could have played a role.
Now to an update on another school shooting from earlier this year. Abby Zwerner is the Virginia teacher who was shot by her 6-year-old student back in January. Well, she is now suing the school district for $40 million. NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa has more.
Do you feel like you could have been better protected by the school?
Yes.
You feel like they should have done more?
Yes.
25-year-old Virginia teacher Abigail Zwerner now demanding her school district pay for a tragedy she says could have been prevented. Her attorneys on Today.
One of the students has actually seen the gun. At that point in time, you have a ticking time bomb in the school, and the school failed to do anything about it.
In a $40 million lawsuit, Zwerner accuses the Newport News School Board, as well as her former principal, assistant principal, and superintendent of gross negligence and reckless breach of duty for failing to protect Zwerner despite the student's known history of random violence, alleging the 6-year-old had strangled another teacher at Rich Neck Elementary the year before, and claiming the day of the shooting, 3 staffers warned the then assistant principal the boy had a gun, but administrators failed to intervene. Attorney for then principal Brianna Foster Newton in February.
Those who were aware that the student may have had a gun on the premises that day did not report this to Ms. Newton at all.
Zwerner, who was shot in her hand and upper chest, speaking exclusively to Savannah Guthrie last month.
I just will never forget the look on his face that he gave me while he pointed the gun directly at me. It's changed me. It's changed my life.
Zwerner's attorneys anticipating a workers' comp defense.
That's what they've maintained up until today, that is just part of the job. It's an assumption of the job that a first grade teacher is going to be shot by their own student, a 6-year-old. That is unacceptable. That's outrageous.
Maggie Vespa reporting there. The school board, by the way, says they're now working on addressing safety and security, as well as student behavior and family engagement at that school. We did not get a response from the remaining defendants when we reached out to them for comment, and Virginia prosecutors have declined to press charges against that 6-year-old.
Turning now to your weather. Communities still reeling from those devastating storms over the weekend are bracing again for more severe weather.
Yeah, a rough situation. Meteorologist Michelle Grossman joins us now for more on that. Michelle, good morning.
Hi there, guys. Great to see you. Yeah, it is rough. We're not getting a break. We had those storms come in on Friday and Saturday, and we're looking at another round today. We could see a possible severe weather outbreak. So another really dangerous day in terms of the weather, a big spring strong storm. We're looking at alerts in terms of winter weather, because on the backside, we're looking at blizzard conditions. We're looking at feet of snow, 2.5 feet of snow in some spots. Winter weather alerts for 10 million, wind alerts 17 million. And we could see that fire weather risk increase as we go throughout the day. And portions of New Mexico, also Texas. We are also watching the chance for severe storms as we go throughout this afternoon, this evening, and the overnight hours. This is what radar looks like. You can see the blue on the radar. That's where the snow is falling. The white is the heavier snow. We're going to see this increase throughout the day. You factor in those winds, and we will have blizzard conditions. Also seeing some rain along the Great Lakes. That's part of this system. But once we get the daytime heating and that Gulf moisture in there, we're going to see the chance for a severe outbreak as we head throughout the rest of Tuesday. 42 million people at risk for strong, long-tracking tornadoes. We're looking at really large hail once again. That could cause damage on its own. And winds will be gusting, intense winds over 60, 70 miles per hour. If we do see a tornado much higher than that, because we could see an EF2 or greater, that would be winds of at least 111 miles per hour. That could cause widespread damage. The likeliest spots for a tornado would be where you see the red, especially parts of Iowa into Illinois, Missouri, also Arkansas. But where you see the orange and also the yellow, we do have a likelihood of seeing some strong storms as well. With any of these storms, we have the risk for flooding, some flash flooding, especially tomorrow, because we're going to see rainfall rates of 2 inches per hour. It's sort of like a magnet, just pulling that Gulf moisture in. It's going to squeeze it out as we go throughout Wednesday into Thursday. So Houston down to Corpus Christi, you could see some very heavy rain. On the backside of this, we're talking about a major April snowstorm where you see the blues, the purples. That's where we're expecting the highest amounts of snow. Dangerous travel, drifting snow with that wind blowing, and storm totals could be as high as 30 inches or 2.5 feet. We do have a temperature battle. That's part of the problem of why we might see this severe weather outbreak. We have temperatures below freezing back behind this frontal boundary. And then, guys, we're talking about 80s and 70s and then even 90s along the Gulf Coast out ahead of this front. So we do have that clash zone that we're going to be watching very, very closely. Back to you.
Michelle, thanks so much.
Well, the UConn men's basketball team is on top of the world this morning. The Huskies dominated their way to their 5th championship in school history.
UConn cut down the Nets last night after defeating San Diego State 76-59 in the title game in Houston. Connecticut won every game in this year's tournament by at least more than 10 points. It's the school's first championship since 2014, so huge congratulations to the Huskies.
Yeah, look at that celebration. They know how to do it right.
Yes, they do. Wild end to March Madness.
Oh, that's right. Well, coming up on Morning News now, a major blow to Russia. Finland is officially a member of NATO, a move neighboring Russia has been firmly against. What this new expansion of the security alliance means for the war in Ukraine in just a couple minutes.
Also this morning, an alarming rise in potentially deadly fungus cases. The CDC's new concerns.
Welcome back. The United States Central Command says its forces have killed a senior ISIS leader in a strike on Syria. In a statement overnight, CENTCOM said Khalid Aid Ahmed al-Jabouri was responsible for planning ISIS attacks in Europe and developed the leadership structure for ISIS. They added that his death will temporarily disrupt the organization's ability to plot external attacks. CENTCOM says ISIS continues to be a threat in the region and that it was committed to its enduring defeat.
This morning, NATO is formally welcoming Finland, its 31st member, in a historic moment for the military alliance. The country's flag is being hoisted at NATO's HQ less than a year after the country applied to join the group. Finland had been known for its neutral stance and friendly relations with Russia, but the war in Ukraine pushed the Finns to join the Western Defense Pact. NBC News foreign correspondent Kelly Kobiea joins us now for more on this. Kelly, good morning. So this is a significant moment for Finland, and it's a move that doubles NATO's border with Russia. Walk us through how we got to this point. Does it make the alliance safer?
Yeah, so for decades, Finland was militarily non-aligned, even cooperating with Russia on a political and economic level. But all of that changed in February of last year when Russia invaded Ukraine. Finland, you could see the shift in the Finnish population from 20% supporting joining NATO, jumping up all the way to 76% support for joining the military alliance. And by May, that application was in. It's taken several months. Every NATO member has to approve the application before they can join. And Turkey was the last holdout. They finally ratified that application last week, paving the way for today's ceremony in Brussels. NATO's Secretary General talked about this today. He called it a historic moment. He said it does make NATO stronger. Take a listen to a little bit of what he had to say.
This will make Finland safer and NATO stronger. There will be no NATO troops in Finland without the consent of Finland. And of course, what we have in many countries is that we have exercises, we have naval and air presence and so on, but we don't have permanent bases. And this has not been an issue so far in our discussions with Finland.
And so that flag-raising ceremony will happen in just under 2 hours from now. But for all intents and purposes, Finland is now a member of NATO. Sinclair.
Kelly, what's the reaction been like in Russia to Finland joining NATO?
Well, look, this is exactly what President Putin did not want. He said last year before the invasion of Ukraine that he wanted to stop the expansion of NATO. He's had exactly the opposite effect with his with his invasion. We did hear from the defense minister of Russia, who said that this would make conflict more likely, and also from the Kremlin saying that they were going to have to bolster their defenses in the north. It's difficult to see how that would be possible, given their commitments in Ukraine and how much of a demand that is putting on their military. But that's what they're saying at this point. And as you heard the NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg say, a lot of the issues surrounding how Finland is joining and how the alliance will work for them have yet to be ironed out. Finland decides whether or not NATO troops are on its soil. The government has to decide. And as you know, there was an election over the weekend. Nobody got the majority, so forming a government will take several weeks yet.
Kelly, briefly here, we know Sweden also applied to join NATO at the same time, but that seems held up. What's going on?
Yeah, so Hungary and Turkey are the two holdout NATO members not approving that membership. The Turkey's president claims that Sweden hasn't done enough to fight terrorism. He says that they are not handing over some members of a Kurdish party that he believes are terrorists, and also people that he says aided in the attempted coup back in 2016. But today, NATO Secretary General Stoltenberg said that they will ensure that Sweden joins at some point. It just may take a while. Zinkley?
Kelly Kobiella, thank you so much.
More international headlines now. Russian authorities have made an arrest in a bombing that killed a pro-Kremlin blogger.
Ali Arouzi joins us now with that and more. Good morning, Ali.
Good morning, guys. That's right. Moscow is now pointing the finger at Ukraine over the killing of a prominent Russian military blogger and Kremlin cheerleader, Vladimir Tartarsky. Tartarsky died on Sunday in an explosion at a St. Petersburg cafe. Video appears to show a woman presenting Tartarsky with a figurine resembling himself just before the explosion. Daria Trepova, a 26-year-old Russian woman, has been arrested over his murder, but she claims she was set up. Australia has become the latest US ally to take action against the Chinese-owned app TikTok. The app has been banned from all federal government-owned devices over security fears that data can be used to advance political agendas. TikTok say they are extremely disappointed with the decision that is driven by politics and not facts. And finally, the world's deepest living fish has been caught on camera and in a net deep down beneath the surface of the North Pacific Ocean. The unknown snailfish species was recorded at an eye-popping depth of 27,349 feet. Remarkable footage shows the scaleless fish with wing-like fins swimming around in the deep, dark, black abyss. What a remarkable find.
Oh. Yeah, such
really
a cool view there.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that. Very much. Ali, thanks so much.
Thank you. And coming up, it's dangerous, drug-resistant, and spreading fast. After the break, the new warning from the CDC about a potentially deadly fungus and a startling spike in cases.
And mental health experts are sounding the alarm on the growing trend of side hustles. This is Morning News Now.
Back now with an urgent warning from the CDC about a potentially deadly fungus spreading in the U.S. NBC News national correspondent Miguel Almaguer has more now on the state seeing the biggest outbreak.
The alarming spike in cases has been discovered in more than 15 hospitals and long-term care facilities across southern Nevada. The dangerous and sometimes lethal drug-resistant fungal infection, Candida auris, is spreading across the state at the nation's most rapid rate. The CDC just warned the fungus posed a significant threat nationwide.
In a lot of situations, investigation will reveal that there are many more cases. And, it's just the tip of the iceberg, and it's been spreading undetected for some time.
Showing it can evade antifungal drugs, C. auris, as it's known, can infect the bloodstream, heart, or brain, and is mostly connected to patients in healthcare settings. Spread from surfaces like bed rails or pieces of equipment, the fungus can also survive on the skin. Now in Nevada, where there's more than 1,000 cases, there are signs of community spread.
A lot of these patients are coming in with the infection already. And they have no previous medical history. So in those cases, we know they had to get it somewhere.
Quick to point out Seoris isn't viewed as the next COVID, health officials still say if it's not quickly contained, it could become a public health risk. As the CDC works to find better treatments, those who are healthy are typically not at risk. As cases climb nationwide, so is alarm. Miguel Almaguer, NBC News.
It's time now for our weekly mental health check-in. The TikTok algorithm might be pushing you to monetize your side hustle, but that could come with its own price. We have more on side hustle burnout.
Plus, more people are feeling lonely at work, so we're taking a closer look at how you can feel more included in the office.
Board-certified psychiatrist Dr. Sue Varma joins us now to help break down these mental health headlines. Dr. Varma, good morning. So let's start with TikTok, always making headlines. We know more millennials and Gen Z are taking up side hustles to make more money, understandable in this economy. But experts say this side hustle culture is contributing to burnout. So is there any way to continue a side hustle while also protecting your mental health?
Yes, a lot of the side hustles are taking place during our day jobs. So be careful that you're not, sort of like double at the time where you have work stream coming in and then the side hustle happening at the same time. And I think that can create an added sense of urgency. The other thing is take a lot of breaks from social media, from TikTok, and understand that the presentation that you're getting is not reality, right? Like a lot of the people who are on there may be presenting sort of one snippet of their day, but you're not seeing the behind the scenes, all the grind and the grunt work. So understand that it's not reality. And give yourself a routine. Go for a walk, talk to a friend, unplug from the side hustle, if you will.
Social media is not reality, always a good reminder. So, Dr. Varma, new research also from Glassdoor shows that more people are feeling lonely at the office. Walk us through why you think that is, and are there social benefits to these interactions that you have with colleagues? And I guess importantly also, is there a way to make friends at the office? Very busy, and it's hard to do that sometimes.
Absolutely, and especially with the hybrid work situation where a lot of people are getting onboarded onto new jobs with never having been in the office, and that's something that never existed before. And so what's interesting is that if you can understand that the workday provides many built-in opportunities, like when people used to walk to the elevator, they used to walk to the water cooler, they would run into people in the hallways, they would ask for them to get lunch or grab a cup of coffee, that those sort of built-in layers of friendship are not happening. So it's really important that we go out of our way. I would say ask people questions if you're on a Zoom meeting, once the meeting is over, to say, hey, I just want to catch up for a few minutes. Like, can I give you a call, or we can text or FaceTime, or, how is everything? Follow up with people, ask them questions like, hey, last time you said you were out of the office because you were taking your kid back to school. Are they, were they sick? Are they okay? Is everything okay? So you do have to reveal a little bit of yourself. And I know a lot of people feel very uncomfortable about it. So it's not that you're going to open up to your work friends. And it's important that once you leave the office that you have coffee and the plan to meet with people outside of work. But workplace interactions were such a huge source of friendship, and that's now been lost. So we have to make an effort and be intentional to replace that elsewhere.
And Dr. Varma, briefly here, artificial intelligence is everywhere, including now in therapy. There are new apps offering mental health services using chatbots. Do you think this is a replacement for in-person therapy? What should we do if we are using chatbots?
Look, chatbots are great for a lot of people for a lot of different things. Sometimes people really just need a calm, reassuring reminder that everything will be okay. Maybe you need help in between sessions, just a reminder or a booster, a way to reframe what you're thinking if you're feeling down. There's nothing wrong with practicing a job interview, with getting a little mood boost or friendly interaction to supplement your already in-person therapy, your already in-person friends and connections. But this absolutely, at this point, should not be a replacement, even though the chatbots are going to be tempting. They're going to get to know you. They're going to know what you're thinking, what you're saying. Some people are totally weirded out by it. They're like, no way, no way. But I think that they could be a good supplement, but definitely not a replacement.
A good word there. Dr. Sue Varma, thank you so much.
All right, coming up on Morning News Now, crypto bust. More than $100 million seized by the DOJ in what investigators are calling a sophisticated scam. The efforts now to get at least some of that money back to the victims.
And they're the top spots to spend your 9 to 5. We'll tell you who made this year's list of Fortune's best companies to work for. That's next on Morning News Now. We're back now with a warning about a cryptocurrency scam that netted billions of dollars last year.
Yesterday, federal authorities announced they were able to seize more than $100 million in stolen money. And intelligence correspondent Ken Delanian has exclusive interviews with some of the victims and the official in charge of that operation.
The first contact came through a message on Twitter.
Asked me about some questions related to my research, just like, casual conversation. That's how it started.
Soon, the woman's chats with the man we're calling John, a highly educated cancer researcher, turned to investing in cryptocurrencies. He asked us to disguise his identity.
As a scientist, as a PhD, you're naturally curious, and especially when you talk about how much money you can make, I got sort of hooked.
Urged on by his new friend, John began wiring money to a website that looked identical to a real-life online investing platform, and it seemed like he was making a fortune. But when he was unable to withdraw a large sum, he realized that something was wrong.
At that point, how much had you invested?
More than half a million, about $560,000.
Wow. And what portion of your wealth did that represent?
Such everything I have.
John was one of the latest victims in a sophisticated online scam known as pig butchering, which comes from a Chinese term for fattening a hog for slaughter. The gangs that carry out this scheme are largely based overseas, mainly in Southeast Asia. The FBI says Americans have lost billions of dollars to these cons, and usually the money is unrecoverable. The Justice Department is announcing the seizure of more than $100 million stolen in pig butchering scams, possibly including some of John's money. It's the first seizure of its kind, the result of a new focus by federal authorities on tracking cryptocurrency.
We figured out where these accounts were and that there was funds from victims that went through various stops to get to these accounts, and then we seized the accounts from the institutions where they were being held.
Young Choi directs the Justice Department's Crypto Enforcement Unit. She says the DOJ has learned how to use sophisticated software to track ill-gotten crypto and then grab it.
That's a bad day for the crooks.
It is a bad day for the crooks. We think we're raising the costs of their doing business in this manner and preying on the United States public.
Another victim we're calling Eugene, also a scientist, was lured into the con by a real person, someone he knew from graduate school. The scammers strung him along slowly, showing statements with huge gains, even letting him withdraw thousands of dollars. He and his wife quit their jobs, liquidated their retirement funds, and borrowed from friends, eventually forking over more than $5.2 million.
That's all my saving, all my life. My first day of start until now, my weight dropped like more than 20 pounds. I just could not eat and sleep.
But then Eugene got amazing news.
FBI agent in charge of my case, they traced the money and they tracked down the money and they find the money.
The Justice Department is now working to return Eugene and John some of their money.
We're really looking forward to working with victims to try to get them their funds back.
Authorities say the chances of that happening improve if victims report it right away.
What's your message to a victim who feels so embarrassed by this they don't want to tell anyone?
You're not alone. There are hundreds and thousands of you out there. You might think, how could I have fallen victim to this? But we've seen it happen again and again.
It's a reminder of the age-old truism.
If an investment sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Well, authorities say these are long-term scams that usually start off as social media messages from a potential romantic match. They're successful because the victim is usually allowed to withdraw more than they put in at first, building up the victim's confidence. We want to thank Ken Delanian for that report. Well, if you are on the lookout for a new job, but you want to make sure the company is good, well, this next segment is for you.
That's right. And in fact, 96% of Americans will look for a new job in the upcoming year. That's according to a recent poll from Monster.com. And if you're one of them, Fortune is out with its annual 100 Best Companies to Work For list.
Well, Megan Linhart is a senior writer at Fortune and joins us now with more on this list. So good morning, Megan. Thanks so much for being here. So let's start off with the obvious question. The companies that made the top 10, how did they make it there? And a disclaimer, our parent company, Comcast NBC Universal, is on that list.
Yes, congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah.
It's a good company to work for,
Not
clearly.
bad.
Indeed. But no, so our list, we actually work with our partners, Great Place to Work, and we spend about a year on this list, sort of working with the companies, working to make sure that we're getting tons of employee feedback. Millions of employees were surveyed, and then we were sitting there and saying, okay, as of August of last year, what's going on? How do they feel about their companies? Is this a good place to work? And then doing some additional digging with the companies to find out what their benefit packages look like, what they're doing for their employees in these kind of odd economic times that we find ourselves in, right?
Yeah, good way to put it.
Yeah, and so much goes into work. It's not just about doing the job. Impressively, Cisco has topped the list for the third year in a row.
Wow.
So clearly they're doing something right. What's going on?
You know, it's interesting. One of my colleagues actually talked with Cisco CEO, and they really chalk it up to a lot around communication and trust. And of course, Cisco has had layoffs, as have many tech companies. And, you know, it's interesting because I do think that a lot of times the companies on these lists have been on Fortune's list in particular for decades now. And so, and that includes Cisco. And so I think there's some resiliency that you see with these companies that really does sort of help them weather these financial setbacks.
So what are some of the other highlights from companies that they offer employees, maybe stuff we don't expect?
Well, it's interesting because we're sort of seeing, right, that there's a change going on in the workplace, in the workers that we find in the workplace. We've certainly seen over the last couple of years remote work taking a front seat. Now we're sort of seeing some rejiggering, if you will, around that. And so we're sitting there and saying, okay, not only do we want companies to be a good place to work when they're there, but we want the experience to be really great for companies and their employees when they are working hybrid, when they are working remote. What do the benefits look like for folks who are not on site? I mean, we all have those ambitions and dreams, right, of the drop off of the daycare on site, of the, you know, laundry facilities, the dry cleaning, the gym, all right there at your fingertips. But if you're not going into the office, how valuable are those benefits?
Right, a lot's changed in the past few years on that front. Megan, thanks so much.
Thank you, guys.
Break that down.
Thank you. More financial headlines now. Apple is planning to cut jobs in their retail division.
CNBC's Silvana Henao joins us with that and other money news. Good morning, Silvana.
Steven Zickley, good morning to you. Well, Apple is reportedly laying off a small number of people from its retail teams. Now, these jobs are in the division that handles building and upkeep of its stores. And Apple is pitching the move as a way to improve operations versus a cost-cutting measure. Employees have been told they have until the end of the week to apply for other positions within the company. And Apple is offering up to 4 months severance. Apple has largely avoided mass layoffs like those at other tech giants like Meta, Google, and Amazon. Richard Branson's space company Virgin Orbit has filed for bankruptcy. This comes days after the venture cut the bulk of its workforce and said it wasn't able to secure enough funding. Virgin Orbit says it's working to sell itself, and just 3 months ago, it was set to make history by delivering the first satellites into orbit from the UK before the high-profile launch failed and destroyed its payload. And Google is testing a price guarantee for Google flights that will pay you back if a fare goes down after you book it. So when you use the tool, some flights will have a shield icon with a $sign. If you book that particular flight, Google will monitor the price every day until departure. If it drops, you'll get the difference back. And the price guarantee is only available on flights that depart from the U.S. You can only get $500 back per calendar year, and you won't get any money if the price difference is less than $5, guys. I already booked my flight, though.
Oh, yeah, womp womp.
I was going to say the same thing. Oops, well.
Now we're going to the next one. That just motivates us to get another flight.
Yes, Silvana, thank you so much.
You got it.
And coming up, one giant leap for artificial intelligence.
Yeah, when we come back here on Morning News Now, how NASA is using the new technology to help its upcoming trip around the moon. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Some music history is being made in the K-pop world. Jimin, who's part of the famous K-pop group BTS, is now the first South Korean solo artist to hit #1 on the U.S. Billboard Hot 100 chart. His single, Like Crazy, is featured on his debut solo album, Face. That song, by the way, bumped Miley Cyrus's song Flowers, which charted for 8 weeks straight. I'm sorry to say I have not heard Like Crazy yet, Zinkley, but I have heard Flowers, and now I've got it stuck in my head just from
No, likewise. I was one of those Miley streams, but turns out we got to check out this K-pop song.
There you go, right?
Thanks, Stephen. More now from our AI Revolution series as NASA gets ready for a trip around the moon. Their challenge is all about speed. The equipment needs to respond to new problems as quickly as possible, and that's where AI comes in. NBC News correspondent Tom Costello has more on how artificial intelligence is taking on rocket power.
Here at the Goddard Space Flight Center outside of Washington, NASA research engineer Ryan McClelland is pioneering the use of artificial intelligence to design parts of the spacecraft of the future.
In science fiction, there's always thousands of people living in space and these huge structures in space. And what I'm hoping this enables is us to get there.
He calls them evolved structures.
A lot of people comment that they look like alien bones, and it's no coincidence that they look like bones because they develop the same way that bones develop.
The process starts with NASA leadership tapping McClelland's team to bring two components of a spacecraft together.
The first thing is to get the requirements, exactly what the part has to do. And then step 2 is to let the AI tool run and evolve over 30 to 40 iterations. And the next step is you make it with digital manufacturing.
The new technology allows NASA engineers to shorten the time it takes to develop specialty parts for spacecraft from months down to just days. Plus, the parts are lighter, stronger, and they use less material than most human designs.
This is a bracket for the EXCITE mission, which is a balloon experiment that goes up above most of Earth's atmosphere and actually looks at exoplanet atmospheres. So this is just sort of a simple bracket that holds a optical assembly to the back of a telescope.
Dr. Joe Hill-Kettle leads NASA's Engineering and Technology Directorate.
The most important thing to me is this is the future of NASA and the future of space flight and the future of space instrumentation.
She says the technology could be a vital resource for future missions.
If we're going to have the sustained presence on the lunar surface or eventually on the Mars surface, that the additive machine creation of these parts and the rapid turnaround would allow those folks to be able to perhaps fix things in real time, be able to build things off-planet.
But McClelland says aspiring engineers shouldn't worry. This technology will not completely replace humans, at least not yet.
Where it stands right now and where I see it in the near future is that it's kind of like a consultant that allows us to be more productive, but the human designer is still needed.
Artificial intelligence improving spaceflight, one piece at a time.
Our thanks to Tom Costello for that report. And NASA just announced that the new team includes 3 Americans and 1 Canadian. This is all a part of an ambitious push to establish a permanent base on the moon and eventually prep for a mission to Mars. We'll have more on that in the coming hour.
And from interstellar missions to international travel, AI may be the way you plan your next trip. But in Italy, AI has been temporarily disabled due to privacy concerns there. But before that ban actually went into effect, NBC News correspondent Kelly Kobayea hit the streets of Rome to find out if AI is really the future of travel.
Rome, breathtaking, enchanting, and at times overwhelming.
We need to figure out something. We have hungry kids.
With so much to see and do, how do you decide? Guidebooks, tours, or the latest option?
AI. That's right, I'm going to let artificial intelligence plan my every move.
Alongside someone who really knows these streets.
Claudio!
NBC's Rome correspondent, Claudio Lavanga. First up, an app called iPlan.ai, a user-friendly AI-based travel planner. Choose your interests, time frame, and budget, and it offers up a full itinerary.
Guess what the first location is?
The Colosseum.
It guides us to all of the top attractions, but there's a problem.
It goes through the night, like...
Yeah,
we're
4 in the morning, 5 from 4
at the Spanish Steps at 4 a.m.
We set out for the first stop.
It's so big.
No surprise, it's packed, long lines, and a major hurdle.
No more tickets.
No more tickets.
Nope. So we checked out another AI guide, usevacay.com's ChatGPT itinerary planner, hoping to be taken off the beaten path just in time for lunch.
Is that the line?
Yeah, that's at least an hour's wait, unless you're a local and a regular.
Oh.
Thanks to Claudio, we had a table in 5 minutes. And AI's recommended dish?
Very good.
The last itinerary was the best yet, taking us through a charming neighborhood to a museum Claudio hadn't visited and a wine bar popular with locals.
AI has to rely on information that's published. It really doesn't always get updated that quickly online, especially in a place like Italy that is not super tech forward.
iPlan.ai and usevacay.com told NBC News they're working on more advanced versions, though our AI tour ended on a high note.
Maybe a glass of wine.
Maybe a glass of 1 or 2. Hello.
Our final AI stop, another winner, a historic restaurant in a quiet square.
Did AI work?
Hit and miss. It's a good starting point, but at the end of the day, when in Rome...
Do as the Romans do.
That's right. Cheers.
Cheers. Kelly Kobayea, NBC News, Rome.
When in Rome, I think that might be the best assignment in the entire network
Yeah,
this week.
she got it. Kelly, thanks for that. Well, that's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
The news continues right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.